everyone. So today we're talking about how some of the topics in Chapter 5 relate to the Hockaday case, which we read a couple of weeks ago. And so the first question is how do I think the Hockaday, the virtual team members were influenced by different types of motivation? The text discusses a lot of different theories on motivation. It discusses Maslow's hierarchy of needs theory, the motivation hygiene theory, the rewards theory, and the social information processing theory. The hierarchy of needs basically involves a tier of different types of needs, and when one tier, like basic needs, is met, then the person is motivated by the next tier of needs. The hygiene theory assumes that people are dissatisfied when hygiene factors are not being met, but that the hygiene factors don't necessarily result in motivation. Instead, motivation comes from responsibility, achievement, growth, and recognition. And then the rewards theory basically says that if a person is rewarded for good behavior, they'll continue acting on that behavior, and if a person is not rewarded for behavior that's undesirable, they're not going to continue having that type of behavior. The social information processing theory basically says that people are motivated by what others in the organization say are the right behaviors and actions that they should be acting on, and it comes from discussions among coworkers, expectations of employees, and is heavily influenced by social interaction in the organization. I think that when it comes to the Hockaday virtual team, the members mostly are motivated by what would fall under the category of the motivation hygiene theory. It seems to me that the team members are motivated mostly by responsibility to their group, to the Hockaday company, and to the customers. It doesn't talk about any external needs that the team members have, so it wouldn't fall under the hierarchy of needs theory. They've been with the organization for a long time, so they already know what's expected with them, so I wouldn't say that it falls under the social information theory. And as far as the rewards theory goes, the rewards aren't discussed, so I think mostly their motivation comes from the responsibility that they've been given as part of the virtual team. The next question is, how does the LMX theory relate to the Hockaday case? The LMX theory basically is the interaction between leaders or supervisors and the employees. It says that leaders have limited time and resources and share both personal and positional resources differently with employees. It says that employees can be in a high in-group or in a low out-group. And high in-group relations are characterized by high levels of information exchange, mutual support, trust, and input in decision influence. I believe this is the category into which the virtual group fits. They are categorized as a high in-group because they are a special team that the organization is testing out. The organization leaders have a high interaction with the virtual team. I think that there's a high level of trust given to the virtual team members, and they also seem to have input in decision making, especially as regards the issue in Europe and in the US, and they also seem to have influence over what happens as far as their membership in the virtual team and decisions for the future of that team. The next question was how are peer relationships involved, or how could they be improved in the Hockaday case? And I believe there is much that can be improved upon in the area of peer relationships, the text discusses peers in the context of advice networks and friendships. I think that the virtual team may be a good advice network for one another, but I think that they lack the element of friendship. They have never had the opportunity to meet face to face, so I think they have a hard time creating shared meaning between one another. They don't really understand each other very well, and they don't seem to have formed any sort of personal connection amongst one another. I think that they are a good network for getting advice on what to do in the different situations. In the U.S. city, they worked together to get everything figured out and provide advice for one another, and they did so especially even more in the Europe city situation. But they definitely lacked friendship. I think that they would have struggled a lot less, and they would have been more connected and cohesive as a team if their friendship had been improved. I think that this could have been improved through face-to-face interaction and team-building activities. I think that the decision made at the end of the case to allow for team-building activities and face-to-face interactions in the future is very important, and it will contribute greatly to their ability to build friendships with one another. The next question is, how does technology influence the team's communication? Well, it's the only channel of communication they have is through technology. All their communication takes place through the various technology channels. Their teamwork in a virtual group would be impossible without the use of technology. In the case, I believe the sole use of technology as a means to communication is actually a hindrance to the interpersonal relationships amongst the team members. Technology limits the team members' knowledge of each other to a face on a screen or a profile picture or the short video clips they've seen of each other. The team members seem to struggle with developing shared realities, and I think that's because all they've ever communicated through is technology, and somehow there's an impersonal factor that comes into play when you're communicating only through technology. I think when you meet face to face, you connect on a more personal level, and the peer relationships can definitely be improved by face-to-face interaction rather than solely interacting over technology. I know that in my own workplace, we interact with several virtual employees, and I don't feel like I have a real friendship with any of them. However, I feel like I do have friendship with everyone else that I work with face-to-face. So I think that interaction is definitely key to developing friendships and strong interpersonal relationships. So I think that in that area, technology has definitely been a hindrance for the virtual team. However, I think that the virtual team was a necessary change for the Hockaday responders. I think they just need to go about it in a bit of a different way and not rely solely on technology as their only means of communication. And finally, the last question is, are there cultural influences on the team that need to be understood? So it's clear in the case that the different team members are coming from different cultures because they speak different languages, but I don't think that the case provides any outright implication of cultural influence with the exception of those language barriers. So there's not a lot, it doesn't discuss differences like it discusses different time zones perhaps, but that's not really a cultural thing. That's just depending on where you live in the world. You could be totally from the same culture as a person, but you could work halfway around the world. So basically, I think there's definitely cultural things that could be addressed, but I don't think that they are discussed in the case such that we would know about them or be able to infer that those need to be understood. I do think that one issue, as I was thinking about it, I realized that one issue could have stemmed from cultural differences was Francois' attempt to take charge of the group. I suppose it's possible that he comes from a culture where in general, men are the leaders and are responsible, whereas women are not put in leadership positions so much. So it could have been just a cultural thing for him to try and take over because he felt like a man should be in charge in the situation where there was an issue. And while that's not the case, I think it would be helpful for the team members to understand that. And I think it could have helped Mary to understand, no, it's not an issue with you not giving him the leadership. It's a matter of that's what he would have expected culturally. And so it wasn't an issue with her. There's no real indication that this was the case in the Hakaday case, but I suppose it could have been possible. Considering that his name is French, I would doubt it, but it's a possibility, I suppose. Other than that, I don't think there's any indication of cultural differences that should or need to be understood from the case. I think that there definitely were cultural differences, but I don't think that they were discussed in any depth. And that is this week's discussion question for Chapter 5 and the Hakaday case. And I'll see you all next week.